Hi, welcome everyone. Avi, we're live here.
We are. People are starting to come in.
I see. It's increasing by the moment. Kind of like COVID cases in Europe. Welcome everyone. Please say hello in the chat. We're also now live streaming on Facebook. Welcome to
In a minute we will. In a minute we will.
In a minute we will. It tells me my says it's recording now on Facebook.
Yeah, now we are on Facebook as well.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. Webinar. We've been actually on hiatus for 3 weeks this time instead of 2 because of various scheduling issues. We're going to be hearing from Hann, the CEO of SPNI. She returned 3 weeks ago from Glasgow, Scotland, where she and another 3 people from SPNI participated in our the UN climate conference, the climate summit, the conference of parties, as they call it, COP26 in Glasgow. And Iris will be presenting her personal take on that incredible confab and what it means for SPNI and future of nature and nature-based solutions for the climate crisis, which is kind of the niche we're in, one of the niches we're in, if there's a niche to be had in our challenge of climate change adaptation and mitigation. Iris will be talking about that. She was in Glasgow with our chief lobbyist, Gitit, who some of you know, and our director of climate change now, Shira Liberty is her name, and Pazit, who's in charge of all our keynote. Welcome, welcome Ariel from Silver Spring, hoping to have visited Israel. I want to apologize to all of you people who wanted to visit, and we're hoping to be here now and couldn't. It's been a cruel and crazy year. Iris, you're live and can turn off your camera if you want or say hello, but we're going to get going here in a couple minutes.
Okay. Too much light.
I
see myself sparkling.
It's a little light. It's a little washed out, but that's good. Anyway, I'll mention we're just talking about the climate change conference you're returning from. Next year, the COP27 will be in Sharm el-Sheikh, here in our neighbor in Egypt, just a 3-hour drive from Eilat. And SPNI and the environmental movement in Israel will be there in force. So there's that to look forward to. And we'll learn tonight what really happens at these conferences and what these milestones really mean. Because we all know that, oh, hi, Iris from Victor and Vicky and Sammy. There's the chat.
Hi.
Hello, everybody from everywhere. I also want to say, as we're getting started, that we're going to be talking about the climate crisis and the twin crises of climate change and the biodiversity crisis today. But SPNI is a large organization with a lot of important challenges in the environment beyond climate change. Our work in education and community building in Israel, and an appeal letter that's been going out. It went out already this month once or twice, and it will be going out for the rest of the month for those who haven't supported SPNI during this season. And we're raising money at this point for our field schools. Just a little preview of next year. We're going to be launching a more significant campaign for the Engedi Field School, but we're sort of starting now with a little with an appeal that we began in the fall, and we have matching donors for. So please, when you see that letter, maybe go out tonight, consider giving to us, but also for climate change. If you're making a donation, you can say online where you'd like it directed to, but believe me, we have a lot of important needs, and we can use it where it is most needed all the time. We appreciate very much your support. Appreciate the support very much of all our lay leaders, our very active board in the United States, and the people leading our local NGOs in Canada and in the UK. They have a renewed website. Those of you in the UK, check out the British flag on our Nature Israel website, and there's a new dedicated UK site, also in France. December is a busy time of the year for us. We appreciate very much your support from all over, and we'll get going. We're looking forward to a really interesting talk today from Iris, and not just a talk, but a conversation. So hello, everyone from everywhere, from Ossining in Brooklyn and London and South London and Belgrade, of course. Hello, Miroslav and Jerusalem and Weston, Florida. Not sure where that is. Especially really a warm hi from me to Vicky and Sammy. Iris has spoken a lot about you and her really warm feelings about the Glasgow Jewish community and your hospitality and everything. So hello as well. A lot of people from Westchester County I'm seeing, West Hartford, Evanston, Illinois, Toronto. Hello, everyone, and we'll get moving. Iris is my boss. She's been for 6 years now, 5 years.
5 years and 2 months.
5 years and 2 months, the CEO of SPNI, but she's a long-time employee with a hiatus. Iris is a trained lawyer and an environmental planner. She worked here for many years, starting as a soldier teacher in our field schools, and was a planner here for a long time. She directed the planning division of the Ministry of Environmental Protection, was both a lawyer and a planner in private practice. And most relevantly to our conversation tonight, she's just 3 weeks removed from a trip to Scotland, and will be sharing with us her insights of that trip. So thank you very much, Iris.
Okay, good evening. It's very exciting to, well, it's in webinars, you can't see everybody, so I can just imagine all of you. I'll try to share screen. Let's see if it's gonna work. I had a few technological problems, but let's see if it works. Can you see? Can you see it, the presentation, Jay?
Yes, we can.
You can.
But
Okay.
make it please a full screen.
I'll try to. Now it's better?
Perfect.
No.
No notes.
Just a moment. I get help here. Wow, I couldn't do it. Okay.
Good.
Now it's okay?
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Okay. So, wow, it's a little bit difficult to sum up this exciting participation in COP26. As Jay mentioned before, we've been a quite nice and big delegation from the SPNI to COP26. 4 women took part in this delegation, and before participating or leaving the country to take part in the COP, we decided, we chose put for ourselves few goals for the COP. The first one was to study what happens in the world concerning the climate crisis, climate change issues. We know that it's a global issue, and it's very important to be relevant, to be updated. So this was the first goal that we chose. The second one is to get to know colleagues from all over the world, especially from the civil society, NGOs like us. We achieved this goal, and this morning we had a meeting to sum up our participation in the COP26, and we have many connections and many new leads that we got during the COP. So this was the second goal. The last one is to, not the last one, the second one, the second goal, the next goal was to have quality time with other participants from Israel, especially from the governmental delegation. It's a little bit weird, but it's more easy to meet people from the government when they are abroad. They have much more time for us than to meet them in Israel. So we got to have time with the Minister for Energy, and with the Minister of Environmental Protection and other people that usually in Israel it's a little bit hard to get to meet them and to speak with them. And the last goal was to put SPNI or to pose SPNI to be a dominant, to be a leader in working in this issue or leading in this issue of climate change. As you know, it's I think only 2 years that we got into these issues of climate change. We focus on the connection between climate change and nature protection, and I think I felt it very much when we've been in Scotland. Even before the COP started, I was in prime time in the Israeli radio in interviews. If I was not a part of the delegation, if I was not taking part in the COP26, nobody would interview me and hear me in prime time. And to take part in the COP, it's like a ticket to be part of those or to be concerned as one of the main organizations that are leading the issue of climate change. So these were the goals that we put to ourselves before we left, and I think that we really achieved them quite nice. Okay, let's go to what happened in COP26. The first part is the main decisions of COP26. As I suppose you know, or most of you know, that the main decision, the most spoken decision, was what is called the Glasgow Climate Pact. It's 97 points. It's a very long paper with many paragraphs that are phrased in sometimes in a very vague or hard to understand language. Maybe it's in purpose. This is the main decisions, and as I said, there are 97 paragraphs. One of the most famous paragraphs is the one concerning the use of coal, and the original phrase was phase out of coal till 2030, and after at the end of the COP, at the last day, if I'm not mistaken, the phrase was changed to phase down, and it's caused a lot of disappointment from what happens in one of the failures of the COP. But there are more other 96 paragraphs that deal with other issues like the CDM. It's the Clean Development Mechanism. It's a kind of international carbon trade mechanism that enable countries, developed countries, to compensate or to pay for the use in carbon emissions industries by investing in developing countries in moving to a clean energy. And it's a very important mechanism. It works. A few years ago, it slowed down or stopped, and now it got a new boost by COP26. One more point is the obligation or the goal to report annually every year. Now, one of the most challenging issues in dealing with climate change is that the goals are very, and the steps are very long-term steps. And it's very easy to say, okay, till 2050 or 2030, Israel is going to do these steps or another. But our prime minister, I suppose, will not be, or it's question if it's going to be prime minister 20 or 30 or even 10 years from now. And the main test for being serious about climate change is what is going to happen tomorrow, what is going to happen next year. And this obligation to have a report or to give a report, or the obligation to report every year, is very important because it helps us, civil society, or help everybody to see what happens not 10 years from now, but what happens tomorrow, what happens every year. And this is a better way to see that we are standing the goals that we set. One more decision is about loss and damages compensation, because we know that climate change and the steps that are going to be used to cope with the climate change are going to hurt populations all over the world, not in an equal way. And more poor communities will be, part of them won't be able to pay for the steps that have to be done. Electricity may be more expensive, water may be more expensive, and part of dealing with climate change have to take in account considering this population, otherwise it's not going to work. So this was one more decision that was kind of a new thing or new mechanism or new decision that was have been made in COP26. But beside the main decisions, one more or few more decisions like side decisions have been taken. They are not part of the main declaration in COP26, but they are not less important. And the first one is, I don't know if it's important or not, but it's a kind of declaration, a declaration of or decision of the International Financial Reporting Standards that will enable everybody to follow or to see, or it will enable or a transparency to what happens behind the walls of the private sector, and it's a kind of a tool that can help us to see what happens and to follow what really happens, and if all the obligations are being fulfilled. So this is one decision. The other one was published. It's very important to reduce the methane emissions. It's a very strong gas, green gas. I forgot the name, but it's a very harming gas, not less than using coals and other fossil fuels. So it's a very important decision. Stopping deforestation, it's not so relevant to Israel because in Israel sometimes we have even the opposite problem. Sometimes there is over motivation to reforestate places or natural habitats that are not supposed to be planted by trees because they are supposed to be grasslands and not savannas but grasslands. So sometimes forestation in Israel cause more damage than use or help coping with the climate crisis. So we don't experience it, but in other countries it's very important. One more thing. Yes.
Just to interrupt for a second, a preview for Tu B'Shvat, we're going to be asking our supporters to help support us in not planting trees in Israel, especially in Shemitah year, this year when even cacao won't be planting trees. So if the whole, go on.
No, I want to be more precise in it because it's very important to plant trees in the cities, inside cities and communities and so on, but not to plant trees in natural areas that are not supposed to be forested. We have to let nature do its work, and not every place has to be forested, especially the northern parts of the Negev. Inside the cities, it's very important to plant trees everywhere.
Absolutely.
So it's important to do this, to be more precise in it. Speaking about meeting colleagues and doing a knowledge exchange, so we learned in one of the meetings with BirdLife in Glasgow that there is a very interesting project in South Africa explaining why it's not it's good water project, I think, why it's not right to plant trees every place. So here it's closed close the circle with our main goals in participating in the COP. And the last decision, or the last decision was the decision of asset managers to use, as you can see here, that holds a very big amount of money to invest only in carbon natural investment, net zero emissions project. And this is a very important decision because as maybe we'll move to the next slide. As you can see, the third point, money speaks. The third point, money speaks. The role of the private and finance sector is very, very important because decisions are very important, but the last word sometimes, in many cases, is for those who have the money to pay for what we want to do. And this declaration that the money will move to clean projects, clean initiatives, gives a very clear sign to the private sector where it's good to invest and where it's not good to invest, and it's very important. It's very important. So here in this slide, I try to put the main insight that I came back with from Glasgow. The first one was very important for me. It's very important for the SPNI. The talk, everything in the air, in the atmosphere, in the panels, in everywhere in Glasgow, talked about nature and climate as two sides of the same coin. And we really we need it in Israel. In Israel, we speak about nature like one story, and climate change is another crisis. And it's a mistake because if we'll try to solve climate change without taking in account the nature, we're gonna make more harm than use or than real solutions. And it was very important for us to hear in Glasgow that in the main organizations, in the main initiatives, in every place in the world, this is the issue. Nature and climate as two parts of the same coin. So this is one insight. The other one is the power of the public, the power of the youngsters. I have a few images I'll show you in a minute. Money speaks, we spoke about it. And the last point is the role of indigenous communities. It was a very important part of many of the talks, many of the panels. It's not so relevant to Israel because in many cases it's communities, very special communities in South America, Inuits and communities that we don't have in Israel. But it was very clear that without being or taking these communities as part of every solution, we're not gonna make it. So this is the last point. And there's a few images that just two examples for what I mentioned before. This is a photo I took from one of the panels, nature map, speaking about nature as parts of finding or promoting solutions for climate crisis. And it's very important. Nature is part of everything, of coping with climate crisis in mitigation. Natural habitats absorb 55% of all the emissions to the atmosphere. So natural habitats are natural ecosystems are part we can do mitigation without nature. This is one thing, and the other thing is part of the solutions in adaptation. And here in the SPNI, it's very important because in many cases, many issues, many projects that we lead are showing how it's important to deal to protect nature as part of coping with climate crisis. A few examples: one, streams or eco-hydrologic approach to management of streams. It's very important in adaptations to prevent floods that are part of the extreme phenomena that happens in climate crisis. Protecting biodiversity, nature-based solutions, urban nature as part of adaptations of cities, because urban nature and trees in the cities and natural trees in the cities are part of trying to cope the warming or the warmth inside the cities. And the last thing is our so important project, Startup Nature, because now we understand that it's not enough to protect nature. We are the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, so it's not enough now coping with climate crisis to protect nature. We have to do one more step further and to create natural areas and to rewild, reclaim, create habitats. And this is the essence of our so important project of Startup Nature. So this is the first point. In one of the talks or one of the panels, the speaker spoke about the climate change and nature as twins crises. This is how you say crises. And we can see it in this slide. The IPCC, which is the International Panel for Climate Change, has a sister, a twin, IPBS, which is the International Panel for Biodiversity Ecosystem Services. And they work side by side. Every panel have their reports, and every few years, now even more often, they issue a special report, the IPCC on the condition of climate, and IPBES on the condition of the nature. And about a year ago, they had a special, they issued a special report that deal with about both of them together. And you can see one of what is from this report. We cannot deal with every crisis separately from the other one from its twin. So this is one of the main issues that rose up in COP26. And it's very important for us to come with this insight to Israel and to speak here in Israel, in the government, with the municipalities. We came back from COP26 and we learned that this is the right way to deal with the climate change. So this was very important for us. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is the power of the public, power of the, especially from the of the youngsters, but not only. Here are a few photos that I took from the parade, climate parade that has been taken in Saturday in the middle of the COP. I don't know how many people took part in this event, but it was a very impressive one. It's difficult to describe it. And so many people marched along the streets of Glasgow. People from all over the world came to take part. I heard that people came from other countries to take part in this powerful march. And it was a kind of, I don't know, a very strong march that was a sign to the leaders of the world, you can't ignore us. And I think that such a march cannot leave leaders say, okay, it's kind of a buzzword, climate, and it's gonna go over and people are gonna forget from it. And I think it's very important. Many of us, most of us, all of us couldn't be part of the closed room or take part in the decisions that have been made. But I got the very strong feeling that everybody in the closed rooms knew and felt that everybody outside are watching them, and we're going to keep watching what is going to happen, and we're going to check every day and every year if the decisions that have been made are going to be implemented and fulfilled. So this is very, very important. As you can see in the photos down below, not only the people that took part in the march were part of it, but also people that lived or worked all along the routes that the march moved through. And I checked during walking in the march how many people are just sitting in the coffees or in restaurants and not doing everything. Who are all these people? If there are people that don't care, because I feel that they are our main enemy. People that do not care, that do not take one more step to be part of it or to take part in kind of public activity. And there were people that were just sitting in the restaurant and drinking coffee or eating while the march just moved by, but there were very few of them. So this gives me a lot of hope that Glasgow is not going to be just papers. And this brings me to the main question. Will Glasgow create change? You can see the photo here, a photo that I took in one of the, I forget if it's from Edinburgh or from Glasgow. And you can see the concern, a very real concern. While you are talking, our planet is keeping burning, and you keep talking and talking, but everything goes in kind of business as usual. And I suppose that part of you heard Greta Thunberg taking, okay, everything is blah, blah, blah. And it's a question if Glasgow will create a change. And the answer is there is no answer for it. The answer is it depends on us. It depends on us if we're going to be keep going being watchdogs, and if we're going to be active. And it brings us to the role of us, of the civil society, the NGOs, and if we'll be able to keep moving or to keep pushing, not moving, keep pushing the government to take the right decisions. I can say that here in Israel, we're now fighting an agreement, the CATSA agreement, to increase the amount of oil that will be moved through Israel, landing from Asia to Europe, using the Eilat Gulf, endangering the coral reef in Eilat. And the agreement that was signed between CATSA, which is a governmental company, and the private company that is a company that belongs to Israelis business people and Emirates business people. It was signed in the previous government, and we are now fighting or trying to make the government decide to cancel this agreement. And it's very hard. It's a very difficult fight, but hold fingers because we already have 5 ministers that said that they are in our side, and they want the agreement. They think that the agreement should be cancelled. The last one is the Minister for Defense, Benny Gantz, and this is the main test, or the main our main challenge. If we can translate this nice paper, 97 paragraphs and nice declarations, to decisions that have to be done today, tomorrow, and the CATSA agreement is a kind of a test for it. So it's in our hands, and in every discussion we say, hey, you remember the Glasgow agreements, you remember the obligation, the agreement, the declarations. Now it's the time to do it and to pay the check. And so the answer is in our hands, and it's our role and our goal, and we'll have to keep doing it. Otherwise, Glasgow will remain as statements on a paper, nice papers, and a nice visit in a beautiful country, but not more than it. And we don't have the privilege to let it happen. So this is our role, and I hope we'll do it with your help and your support. And before I'll open it to discussions and questions and talk, one more word, a slide to Sami and Vicky. I know you are here. I can't see you because it's a webinar. You can see me, but I can't see you. Sami and Vicky from the Jewish community that hosted me during the COP26 very warmly, and it was a very exciting visit for me. And they not only hosted me in their home very warmly. As you can see here in these photos, every Saturday, every Shabbat day, and other volunteers from the Glasgow Jewish community, Friends of Glasgow, Friends of Israel, operate a stall in the main, one of the main roads in Glasgow every Saturday, as you can see, in the wind and in the rain. And they stop people and invite people to the stall and explain them about Israel. And as you can see in the sign, they're not saying we're against the Arabs and we are standing with Israel. They offer another solution, a very nice and sane one. And it was a very touching and very impressive to see it. They are doing a wonderful work. So it's an opportunity for me, a chance to me to say thank you personally, and say thank you for hosting me and doing this wonderful and exciting work. As you can see in the photos, to take the stall, to install it, to explain with so much patience, because people have many questions and many mistakes and all kinds of thoughts and things that they think about Israel, and it's a very important work. That's it. That's it. My main insights from Glasgow, from participating the COP, and the main. I'll stop sharing. And the main work is ahead, and we'll keep doing it.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Iris. And there's lots of questions. We'll get right into them. You know what? But our very loyal and active new board member in New Mexico, Dan Pava, who is with us tonight, who Dan Alon and I just visited, throws us a softball, and he just asks, and I think it would be a good way to just begin this for our participants here tonight. Can you share with our viewers specific efforts that SPNI is doing to address climate change and protect nature and biodiversity in Israel? How will our contributions help SPNI achieve its goal? For example, and then Dan lists a few of the ways that we are doing it, but really, Iris, you need to give us a 3-minute answer. But Dan does suggest as examples, field schools for education. Of course, environmental education is so important for us, lobbying the government, challenging misguided urban growth, or I would say suburban growth is the problem. And of course, the Startup Nature Initiative, which you did mention. But just a word perhaps on some specific efforts of SPNI.
All the points that you mentioned, we do all these things. And 2 weeks ago, we took Shira. I don't know if Shira is here, but Shira that leads the head of climate department in the SPNI was part of the leaders of a climate camp, the first one, and we really have a plan to operate more camps like this in field schools. Climate is part of our educational plans. It's part of our we have kind of units dealing with this issue in our trips, in our outdoor training, in the environmental education that we do in schools and so on. And I think the main challenge is to translate the climate considerations into every decision that is made in the planning and building committees. We're in the first steps of doing it, and checking to check every decision that is made, like the CATSA, the example that I mentioned before, to see that it goes with our goals.
Absolutely, thank you. I wanted to mention CATSA is the Hebrew acronym for the EAPC, the Europe Asia Pipeline Company, which we have been educating our viewers and our supporters about from the beginning of the year, the horrendous oil spill in February in the Mediterranean, but the concept of increasing by hundreds of percent the amount of oil, Emirati oil, that they want to ship through Eilat, through the Negev to Ashkelon for export is, that's the name of the game here. And as you're right, Iris, it is a test case, it's a litmus test for this government and its commitment to fight climate change. So many questions.
More point.
Sure.
Go on. Okay, maybe one more point. One of our roles in the SPNI is to lead, I mentioned it before, but the attitude to climate change in Israel is apart from nature. And our goal is to ensure that everything that is that somebody has to do with climate change take in account the natural habitats and the ecosystems. It's not so easy. It sounds very easy, but we have to do it first in the SPNI, then to do it in the environmental movement, and we are the leaders of this because the talk in Israel is okay, climate change. We have a problem with the climate. 0 emissions, no fossil fuels, and that's it. It ends in it. And we have the role to lead another conception that takes nature in account, to see nature as our main ally in coping with climate change. So, very important point.
Okay. So a lot of questions and not a lot of time. I mean, we still have 15 minutes, but there's some really meaty questions that people ask, Iris. The first one, I'm just going to go in order here. Allison Cipriani asks, how do you justify, and I know this is something that you've talked about, we've spoken about it. How do you justify all the flights in and out of Scotland, supposedly to improve the environment? Yet another conference that produces not much. And worst of all, for Israelis to fly to Scotland to talk to each other, really, Israelis?
I don't know if you know, but flights contributes 2% to all the emissions. So it's not so much. And I know the criticism about it, but I think that well, days will tell, but I think that if, as I mentioned before, the power of such a conference cannot be achieved by Zoom meetings. And the power, the energy that have been in Glasgow, people, our prime minister, okay, that didn't deal with climate change before. After a visit in Glasgow, he came back to Israel, not the same person that arrived to Glasgow. So sometimes it's worth to pay this price, and it's very difficult because coping with climate change needs the individual cannot. Okay, every individual cannot change climate, cannot contribute much, and the decisions, the main decisions, have to be done by ministers, by governments, and it's a price that we have to pay for it. Because, okay, I flew to Scotland and it's was I don't know how many tons of carbon that was emitted to the atmosphere. And like me, few more thousands of people. But we created something that it's, as I see, as I believe, is a milestone, a very important milestone to make a change. Because every individual cannot make alone a change. We need the leaders, and the leaders see and watch how many people cares about it. And they see now that people cares about it from the private sector, from NGOs and so on. And you can't have the same from Zoom meetings.
I agree, Iris. There's something about human nature that makes, you know, the ministers themselves and you personally and Gitit, our lobbyist who came back, there's something about the energy of the face-to-face interaction, and especially in that kind of context, a big group for several days that can't be replaced by Zoom or by anything. So I agree. Look, Bob Schloss has a question, and I'm going to combine it with another question, which was from Michael Klein, which says, Michael just says, you know, Israel contributes such a minuscule portion of the world's greenhouse gases. How important is it for Israel to fight climate change? But also, Bob asks, to what extent have any of the 250 largest Israeli businesses announced any changes in plans since COP26? And, you know, since the Israeli government's broader strategy was announced. So what role does Israel play in fighting it really? And what about the business sector?
Okay, the business sector was a very, I'll start with the second question. The business sector was a very, I think it was the largest in the Israeli delegation. Many business people came from Israel, and it's very important. I was very happy to see it. The role of Israel, it's a very good question. 3 points. First, Israel is going to be affected from climate change more than other countries. Israel is warming in a double pace than other countries. I think the average is less than 1 degree Celsius. In Israel is 1.4. So this is the first point. We're going to be affected much more. And in our neighborhood, with the countries that have no access and no ability to have access to water and energy, very poor countries, we're going to suffer severely from climate change. We have to be concerned a lot from climate change, more than other countries like Scotland or the US or other countries in the world or Europe or so on. This is the first point. The other one is we have incredible nature, the natural habitats, much more, it takes much more than our area in the world. We are a biodiversity hotspot. We are a very bottleneck for migrating birds. So our role in this point is bigger than the place that we take. And the last point, which our Prime Minister mentioned in the conference, is we have the ability to lead in technological and other solutions and to be a leader in coping with climate change. We can be startup nation, it's confusing, startup nation in leading solutions for climate change. We are a very dense country. We're in a very sensitive area, and we can lead solutions that take into account nature and climate change, and to lead, to be a leader for all over the world. It's an opportunity. Every crisis is a kind of an opportunity, and this crisis can be an opportunity for us as well.
Thank you. Yes, that last point I think is very salient. Startup Nature Nation. That's the new brand.
Yeah, it's
Iris, Bob also asked, Bob Schloss, did you see any evidence of bilateral climate change action initiatives in the planning phases, such as Israel with Germany, or Jordan, or Canada, or the USA, Israel with India, anything like that going on that you sense there or know about?
Yes, there were few talks and few leads and few connections that we've made with Germany, with Egypt. We mentioned it in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
This morning we had an appointment of summing up the Glasgow, the participating in the COP, and preparing a plan for the next steps. And we have few leads, very important and interesting leads. I didn't mention it, but the next COP 27, is going to be taken in Egypt, which is our neighbor, very close to Israel. And we started this morning, some in Glasgow, we started to plan Sharm el-Sheikh, the COP 27, and it's so mitbakesh, it's so obvious that we'll be we will prepare a Paris COP, or we have few ideas to bilateral or trilateral initiatives.
Great.
As preparation for the next COP.
Yes, I had mentioned that before you got on, actually. Sharm el-Sheikh in late November 2022. SPNI and the Israeli, I think the Israeli environmental movement will be there in force. Maybe we'll be walking the Israel National Trail and then another 400 kilometers south. Okay. Linda Siegel asks, and wow, this is softball for you. Was there any consideration of the reduction of the massive meat and chicken production in the form of factory farming, which both destroys the animals and creates a lot of methane gas?
Well, start with the question, why there was so much meat in the conference itself.
There was?
There was. I was shocked. I was sure that the conference is going to be vegan, or at least vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. And it was not easy to find vegetarian food. Most of the dishes were with meat. I was surprised in a bad way.
Wow.
There were talks about it, but I cannot say how much it took part from in the COP. It was part of the talks and so on, but it was not so. It didn't have a strong presence in the COP, in my feeling.
We're not there yet, but Startup Nation, excuse me, has a lot of food tech going on, and the meat alternatives for the meat eaters and meat lovers will be. They're really advancing. The technology is advancing, all the time. We're not there yet, but I think we're going to get there, and I say that as a meat eater.
I saw there was a blue zone and a green zone. In the green zone, I saw a few initiatives, and there are initiatives and talks about it, but it was not like the reducing of methane emissions and other issues that were more present.
I think you touched on this, but Wendy Hall asks about how does considering nature protection work with Israel's build approach? Developments everywhere and encroaching on remaining open lands. What about conservation, landscaping, and urban areas to provide wildlife habitats and native vegetation within human communities? Which
Oh, this is what we do every day and every night in the committees. I'm a planner in my, and this is what we do every day. Israel is, as I mentioned before, is one of the dense countries. We are going to be the most dense country in the developed world. And it's an everyday effort to see that new plans will not go to the open spaces, but will go inside the cities, infilling and so on. It's not easy. There are plans for new settlements still, and there are plans for to build in open spaces because this is the easiest way to develop in Israel, and we fight for it every day.
Absolutely. Bob Schloss asks again, interesting question. Is there any prospect of getting religious leaders such as the chief rabbis to speak out about climate change, perhaps before Tu B'Shvat? We need to get support from apathetic centers of the public who are preoccupied with religious observance, sports or fashion or music or culinary issues. What's SPNI doing?
Oh, we don't do it enough. We have to do it more to get to all kinds of celebs and so on. But to the religious leaders, it's very important. Now there is a discussion in Israel because the price of how you say חד פעמי,
disposable
dishes and yes. So the price of them is going to rise, and one of the main consumers of this kind of issues is the religious community, and it causes a lot of questions, and we feel that we have to do more to explain and to do more education and so on. And what is easy in this community is that if you go to the leaders, it's very easy. So we have first steps in it, but not enough. It's not easy. We have to adapt our messages to the religious community. It's not the same language. One of our challenges.
Thank you. Excuse me, just a few minutes left. I want to respect people's time. So just quick answers. And this Francine Glassman asked a very interesting question. How would you seek to influence local politicians who have little or no commitment to environmental issues?
Wow, this is a very interesting question, because what we feel in Israel, that the leaders in the municipalities are much more committed to environment. In every city in Israel, there is a green, almost in every city in Israel, there is a green party. And the green agenda, environmental agenda, is part of, I think, many or even all of the leaders that compete in the elections for the municipalities. We do not see the same thing in the national scale. There is no green party in it, or there was a green party. I was part of it more than 10 years ago. But it's not part of the agenda, still not part of the agenda in the national elections. So our main challenge is the national scale, not the municipal scale. Maybe it's because people feel more close to what happens near where they live, and they are less concerned about national issues. They care what they have near their house and what is the air quality, and if they have open spaces and parks and so on. So it's part of the municipal agenda, not the national one. So the problem is the opposite.
But I agree. I think, Francine, the answer to your question is that local environmental issues are often a gateway for more broader environmental concerns.
Sometimes it's the opposite.
And sometimes it's the opposite, that's true. Wendy Hall asks, how can Americans and other foreigners support climate-related actions in Israel, other than through supporting SPNI in our work and other similar NGOs, perhaps?
Oh, good question. We'll have to talk about it, Jay, to think about ideas. How can we influence? maybe every time when Bennett or our prime minister or other ministers get to visit or to meet people in the States or communities, maybe questions should be raised or in events or so on. We have to think about it. I don't have good questions for it, but it's an opportunity that we should take and think about it.
Okay. Question about electric buses in Israel. Are we running currently as our transportation ministry? They have electric buses already, or they're getting them?
Very few. I came now. My last meeting just an hour ago ended with the minister for transportation. We spoke about public transportation. I'm a user of the public transportation. And so much, after so many years of giving the first place to the private cars in Israel and supporting the private transportation, now the new minister, woman minister, wants to make a change, and there's so many challenges, so many. So this is one of them. We don't have enough electric transportation buses in Israel. Only baby steps in it.
Thank you. Well, we're past the hour, so I'm just going to end with Ariel Siegel writes that it was encouraging to see a declaration by rabbis that climate change is in fact pikuach nefesh, a life-threatening issue. And he linked to it here, but I haven't clicked on that link yet. I'm wondering what rabbis declared that and where. But that would be a goal, I think, as a, it's kind of like the way the defense ministry has recently gotten on board, realizing it's a security threat, or the Israel's National Security Council. Thank you everybody so much for being with us here to the end. Iris, we were about 100 people here at the maximum, and mostly Dati Leumi modern Orthodox rabbis, Ariel says, so that's cool. I'm guessing abroad though, but maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, and if they did say that here, we'll have influence. So no, Israeli. Wow. Okay, Ariel, that's great. I didn't realize that, and that should be. I hope those rabbis have influence, and even within the rabbinical community. So thank you, everybody. Thanks to all our supporters.
Well, I apologize. So many comments here. I was focused on speaking, and I didn't have the chance to answer you. So I'll look at all the comments later. So sorry that I couldn't.
Yeah, I've been reading through the questions and answers. I see there have also been some comments in the questions, but
okay.
Well, people are still with us, so if you want to give it another few minutes, I'm not sure.
I'll look at it for a few minutes. Yeah.
Everybody who has to leave, thank you very much. I see not many people are, but I'm not sure there are any questions. There's comments you can read here. So I'm not sure really there's questions.
Okay.
Have you seen any?
Well, it's recorded, so I can read it later.
Yeah. The document, the 97-page document from Glasgow, that's actually 97 paragraphs that Iris mentioned. Yeah, we can send that link to Marlene. And well, thank you everybody again. Thanks to all our people also that I visited with Dan alone recently. I saw Dan Pava was here, and Shoshana in Toronto, Robin, always with us. And thank you so much for manning the offices, peopling the offices there in New York. And thanks everybody else. Yeah, Iris, you're getting a lot of thank yous, and you've given people hope, and it's cool.
What we'll do without hope?
Well, nothing to do without hope.
Nothing to do without hope. People ask me, what do you think? Are you optimist? I have no other choice. And there are solutions to climate change. We just have to do it, and it's in our hands. As I said, our main enemy is to be a dish, how you say, not
indifferent,
involved.
Apathetic. Yeah, that is the enemy. Yes, well, you gave us hope. Thanks very much. So we will be back next week. Dan alone will be finishing up our 2021 webinars with an overview of the successes in our environmental protection department in 2021 and challenges we're facing in Israel in 2022. That's next week, same time. same place. You've received and you'll receive the registration links. Hope to see you here. And then we're taking a break for a month over the Christmas holidays, New Year's, and we'll be back with Yossi Leshem on January 16th. A Tu B'Shvat message, and also talking about international cooperation and why the barn owl is replacing the turtle dove as the bird of peace. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for all your great comments.
Thank you all.
Avi, thank you so much for back office there in Toronto. Thanks to all our supporters in Canada. I had a great time there in Toronto and all over the States. So we'll see you all soon, and signing off from Israel, from Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Toronto. Bye, everyone.
Bye, good night, and thank you.
Good night, good night.